Hello and welcome, my name is Andrew Peel, and in this video I want to give you a demonstration of a new asset library I'm working on called Home Builder. Home Builder is a library that focuses on simplifying the workflow of creating interior architectural spaces in Blender. This is accomplished by utilizing parametric assets that are easy to place in the scene with a wide variety of properties to control the size and options for the assets. There are several different categories of assets that are available, and in the first release, it includes different types of walls, doors, windows, cabinets, and appliances. The Home Builder library is free and open source. Download links are available in the description below. But if you want to support the development, you can always purchase the Extended Asset Library, which provides you with hundreds of additional appliances, materials, and lots of other parametric assets. If you're more interested in learning how to create your own assets and maintain your own library, I have all of the essential training available for free on my website, but I also have a Patreon which will give you access to extensive training videos on how to create and maintain your own library. Well, with that said, let's go ahead and jump into the demonstration. All right, so here I have the Home Builder library active, and in the library we have a drop-down that shows you the different categories of assets that you can choose. And then here in the top right, we have this library interface, which I'll get into in a little bit here. The main thing that I like to do when I start a design is set the different default cabinet sizes and different sizes of the different assets that I'll be using. And all I'm going to really change here is for the tall cabinets, I'm going to change this to be 96 inches tall. And for the upper placement, for upper cabinets, the height above floor will be 96 as well. This will just make it to where the tall and upper cabinets are at the same level. So next we're going to go and add in some walls, and so we'll switch to the walls category. We have a few different styles that we can use. For the most part, you'll be using just this standard wall. And if you drag this into the scene, you can determine the starting point of your wall. So here we'll just left click, and then you can move your cursor, and depending on the location of your cursor, that will determine the rotation of the wall. And then here we can left click and just continue to place the different walls here. So when you're done, you can right click or escape to cancel the command. Now the brick and the framed wall were really just created as a sample. So here if I drag this in, here I can, these work in the same way. I can just position where I want these to be, but you'll notice that I have all of the geometry that's being created for those bricks. And I used this when I was just really testing out the parametric library creation features. And so here I created this wall, and if I right click, and everything within the library, you can right click and access the wall prompts or the prompts for that asset. And so here for this wall, we have the sizes of the bricks that you can modify. We have the length and the height that can be changed. We can change the mortar thickness, which is basically just the space between the bricks. We can change the mortar inset as well. And so this is pretty overkill for most assets. You can always just assign a brick texture to the standard mesh wall, but let's say you're creating an animation where a car breaks through a brick wall or something along those lines, having all of that additional geometry there could be helpful. Or if you're trying to create reports for pricing or determining how many bricks you're going to need for your design, having the assets with that information in there could be very helpful. And then framed wall is pretty similar. Just drag this in. We can just select where we want that located, escape, right click to cancel the command. And then here, this wall just has some properties for the stud spacing and then the material thickness that's used for that. But like I said, for the most part, you'll be using just the standard mesh wall that's created. So I'm just going to delete those for right now. And here with the standard mesh wall, if we select these, we can right click to access the prompts. And here we can adjust the length of each wall segment independently. We also have these tools where we can add in a floor for our room and a room light. And so here if we go into the rendered view, and with the light selected, if we right click, of course we have access to the light prompts. And so here we have various properties we can change. If we want to increase the energy of that light, we can always change that value there. And this is just a very simple way of just quickly adding lighting to your scene when you're working in a rendered view. And of course, if we select the floor and right click and access the prompts, here this just gives us access to the texture mapping. So we can adjust the scale of this. We can also adjust the rotation. So you've got, very quick ways of making those sorts of modifications. Next, let's go ahead and add in some doors and windows here. So let's switch to the door and window category. Let's drag in the single door and we'll place it. And here, these will snap to the wall and you can continue to place these or hit escape and right click to cancel the command. And like everything else, if we select it, right click and access the entry door prompts, we can change the size, we can change the height, the location of this door on the wall. We can open up the door. We can change the door swing to be left, right, or even double here. If you want the door to swing into the room, you can make that modification as well. You can also just turn off the panels and the hardware. So if you just want this to be an opening, you can make that modification too. And then for the door hardware, you can always adjust its location, vertical, and then also from the edge. So there's quite a few options there, but one of the best things about this is that you can change out the components. And these components are completely customizable to where here, if we want to change out the panel, you'll have some different categories that you can choose between. If you've purchased the extended asset library, then you'll have this deco category where you can have just a few, additional styles of doors that you can choose between here. But here, even in the sample library, you'll have a few different styles that can be selected. In the frame, if we go to the sample directory, you have like this craftsman style or just kind of this, square style that can be used. But in the extended asset library, you'll have all these different profiles and things that can be selected here. And a lot of times when I'm working on a design, I like to do this in the solid view and switching to the flat style. Just gives us a really good conceptual design to where we don't really have to worry about the materials that are being used. You can just quickly see the information and the models that are created. And let's go ahead and just change this to be this frame door here. And of course, the last component here is handle. So we have just two different styles. You can use this round handle or this style here. And like you might expect, windows work in a very similar way where we can drag these in, they snap to the wall. We can left click to place them, escape to right click, or escape to cancel the command. And then if we access the prompts, here we can change its location, we can change its size, adjust that. Since it's common for there to be the same type arrayed many times, you can always enter in the quantity and the offset value to just have that automatically added multiple times to that wall. And for the window, we have the ability to change the frame and the insert, so like the style of window that's being added into the interior. And so here we can choose what style we want to use in our design. Maybe change out the frame as well. And all of the components that you're seeing me select in here, if you go to the library interface and go to assets, here's all the different types of components that are currently in the library. There will be more eventually, but you'll notice if we go to the window frames here, you can see all the different styles. And there's a way in the commands drop-down to create new types of assets, model them however you want to. So if you wanted to create some crazy sci-fi looking door panels and frames, then you could always create whatever style you want to and then save that to your library. So you have a lot of control over how these assets are going to look. It's not just a static model that comes in the same way. You really have a lot of control over what your assets are going to look like. Next, let's go ahead and add in some cabinets here. So we'll go ahead and drop in a drawer cabinet, and these work the same way. You can determine where they're going to be positioned by just dragging them into the scene, and they'll snap to walls. Here, if we left click, that'll place that asset. Here, if we select a part and go into the cabinet prompts, we can adjust the size of the door or the cabinet, the location. So here, if we just type in a value, we can also adjust its location on that wall. And then there's various options for this cabinet. So if we wanted to add in fillers, you can adjust these values here. We'll add in a sink or cooktop a little bit later on here. There's various carcass options for the base assembly height and the finishing options for each side of the cabinet. The exterior, since we have drawers currently added in here, we can adjust the drawer height for each individual drawer, but since they're calculated equally, if you wanted to adjust maybe just the top one, you would uncheck this value, type in the value for that, and then here you can always click the calculate drawer fronts, and you'll notice that that calculates the remaining ones that are checked equally. I eventually want this to calculate automatically, but for right now, if you make a change, just click the calculate drawer fronts, and that will make your modification. Apart from that, here if we go ahead and add in a appliance, we'll go ahead and put a range next to this. Now the default range that comes in is kind of just this generic range, and so it's just here in the sample library, but it's really helpful because you can adjust the size. So this is parametric, but if you wanted a range that is from a manufacturer, just a manufacturer specific one that has specific set sizes that can be used, here we have the Thermador available in the extended asset library, so you can just select what style of range you want in here. And of course, since it's common to have a range hood above that, you can always just turn this on. Here the generic sample one will come in by default, but of course we have all sorts of different Thermador manufacturer specific ones. So you can just select the style that you want, and that comes in just like you would expect. Now, apart from just dragging items into the scene, if you select an item, right click, there also may be some commands. So for the cabinet, we have move, grab, and duplicate. So if you just wanted to copy that cabinet, we can always just click duplicate, and that puts us in a placement mode. So it just copies that information, and we can determine where we want that positioned. Now, if you're using the move cabinet command, that's going to be just like the placement mode. So right when you drag in an item, you can determine where you want this positioned, and then just left click to place that. If you're using the grab command, that works just like Blender's default move. So there's a lot more flexibility. You can just determine anywhere where you want that positioned. But for now, I'm just going to go ahead and type escape. All right, so let's go ahead and add in a few more cabinets here. Let's go ahead and I'm going to use this stacked cabinet. So we'll just drop this in. This is just kind of like a cabinet stacked right on top of another one there. This is pretty common when you have taller ceilings in your kitchen. And the nice thing about this is that it works just like one cabinet. So we can always adjust the bottom cabinet height easily. Or in the exterior options, we can see now we have the top door and the bottom door. So you can see as we open up these values, you can see what's in the interior, but you have control over each cabinet separately. And so for this top one, I might just turn off the pulls and maybe have some sort of a self-opening mechanism in the top door. And then for the bottom one here, I'm going to move the pull Z location down just to a bit better location there. Next, we'll go ahead and add in a refrigerator next to this here. And let's go ahead and just put in another stacked cabinet right here. And for this one, we'll go ahead and make the same modifications, but we'll go ahead and change the door swing to be right, and we'll turn off the top one and then set the Z location to be in the same location as our other door. Now I do want to have some properties, so if we select this refrigerator, I want to have some additional options. We can obviously change the size of our refrigerator here, or of course, we have the extended library. We've got several Thermador assets that can be used here. But if I wanted to add in like an upper cabinet above this, I should have a checkbox here because it's very common to have like an enclosure that the refrigerator gets placed into. And so just having a checkbox to either add, just an upper cabinet or the full enclosure would be really helpful. But for right now, I got to kind of do that manually, which isn't such a big deal. Here, if I just drag in this two-door upper cabinet, I'm just going to place it right next to this stacked cabinet here. You can see it's kind of just being placed right on top of this refrigerator. So I'm going to go ahead and go into the prompts. I'll set the height to be 12, just so it's a small cabinet, and then the height from floor 96. And actually here we'll do 96 minus 12. And then the depth here, we can just make the same as all of the other cabinets. And of course for the exterior, let's just turn off the pulls. That way we kind of have that same look along the top there. All right, so let's go ahead and add in some additional upper cabinets right above these drawers here. So one thing you'll notice is that when we drag in a cabinet here, it'll snap to the left or the right of a cabinet if it senses a collision, but you'll notice if I drag over the base cabinet here, since there's no collision, it'll just center itself right above that. So here you can just quickly center upper cabinets right above other ones there. And for this, let's go ahead and turn off the pulls along the top there. And finally, let's go ahead and add in a island to this design here. And I'm just going to go and select this product here, and we'll just duplicate it. And here we can just move this to the center of the room. And I want to flip this around. And so if I use the arrow keys on my keyboard, you can see that I can rotate that asset by 90 degrees. And so here we'll just go and place that right there for now. And then let's go ahead and place in a 2-door cabinet right next to it. And go ahead and just copy that one, place it right next to there. And to kind of better position this, here I'm going to go into a top view, and I'll select this first cabinet in the run, and we'll just use the grab command. So now I can just position this exactly where I want it to be. And for this center cabinet here, let's go ahead and add a sink in there. And so if we right click, go to the prompts, here we just have these simple checkboxes that we can use. And here we can select a bathroom or a kitchen style sink. So we've got these different options, and you just select these just like so. And of course, you can also add in a faucet. And we've got bathroom and kitchen style faucets here, and there's a whole bunch of them that we can choose between. Right now, I'll just go and select this one here. And just like how the sink works, you can also just do that with a cooktop as well, and add in a cooktop and a range hood to a product as well. And so here we have that added, but I want to extend this out a bit further just to make it a little bit bigger of an island. And one simple trick that I can use here, if I just add in a 2-door base cabinet and just snap it to the end, I can then select that product, right click and go to the prompts. And so here I have this rotation that I can adjust here. And so by just flipping this around, I'm just going to set the Z rotation to be 0. And here I can just shrink the depth down a bit and then change the width to be the same size as the island. Now, one little trick that's nice to know about here is if you don't know, the exact size that it's going to be, you can always use this little arrow button right here. And that will select the object that controls the width of the cabinet. And so you'll notice when I select that, there's this little dot here. And what that's done here is there's a little tiny object that's used to calculate the location or the size of this product. And so now I can just use standard blender commands. So I can either just use this tool here to just grab this handle and move this where I want to. And if I hold down Control, I can just snap it to locations within the Blender environment. So that makes it really easy. Or I can use the G command, which is just the grab command in Blender, which allows you to quickly position these objects. And so here, if we just go into material mode, we can kind of see what that looks like. And since this wouldn't actually be a door here, might as well just go into the exterior and turn off the pulls, because we're going to assume that these are just kind of 2 panels that are added to the back of this run of cabinets. And so that's looking pretty good, and we can always go into a rendered view as well. Maybe in this instance, we'll go ahead and crank up the light to be a bit stronger. All right, that's looking pretty good, but I've always liked the look of just standard white kitchens. And so if we wanted to adjust the materials for our entire design, or if we wanted to adjust various things about our entire design, that's where this library panel comes in handy. So here in the materials tab, we have access to all these different material pointers. And so here, if we wanted to change one of these pointers, we can see we have like the cabinet unfinished surfaces, the exposed surfaces, the interior, the door surfaces, things like that. We can adjust each one of these independently. So here, if I just wanted to switch to a white color, we'll use this high gloss white melamine. Here I'll go ahead and have that material selected, and now I can just change, and I'll just change all these for right now. So I'll change all of those pointers and update the material. You can see that immediately updates the material in our design here and allows you to try out different materials very quickly in your design. Not only that, but we will have the ability to quickly add moldings. This is currently under development, but I expect to have that in the next release of Home Builder. But we have the ability to adjust the fronts. And so here you'll have a couple different samples that can be used, from shaker to slab, or in the Deco library, we've got additional styles that can be used here. Right now, let's just go ahead and change this to be a shaker. And then with that selected, we can just change out all the different types. So we can change the base, tall, upper, and drawer fronts independently. We update that. We can see how that will update our entire design. And finally, if we wanted to change the hardware, right now we just have the pole selection for the cabinetry, but here we've got some samples, or of course we have different decorative poles that can be used. We wanted to adjust these, maybe use this rope handle here. We can update that. You can see that will change out the hardware in our design. So keep in mind that this is just the first release, or really this is release 0.1. So the tools will be getting much better. I'll be creating a lot of different types of assets. So things like wall paneling, stairs, window treatments, corner cabinets, floating shelves, built-in appliances, lighting fixtures, all sorts of different things, even including decorative assets that you can use to dress up the scene to make a very nice photorealistic rendering. And there's not only going to be more assets, but there will be better placement functionality, a simplified workflow, all sorts of great features that will make this a very helpful tool for anyone trying to create interior architectural scenes. So for those of you who are able and willing to help support development by purchasing the extended asset library or signing up for the Patreon, you'll have a lot of impact on what features are implemented and what I focus on. After all, I'm building this for the community, so hopefully those who are interested will be willing to provide feedback on what they think. So I'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Subscribe to the channel for future updates on this library, and I'll see you in the next one.